Give my dad a job, and I'll get you walking again, the little girl told the disabled millionaire, but he laughed. Then the impossible happened. Comment giving a score from 0 to 10 for my story. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I count on your help. The sound of the tiny hand knocking on the solid wood door echoed through the hallway of the 30th floor of the most luxurious commercial building in the sprawling industrial metropolis. The secretary looked up, puzzled. There were no appointments scheduled for that rainy Tuesday afternoon, and certainly not for a child. The door opened slowly, revealing a 4-year-old girl who looked barely 2. Her brown hair was disheveled from the rain, her simple clothes soaked, and her bare feet left small puddles on the marble floor. Her big, dark eyes shone with a determination that contrasted sharply with her fragile appearance. "I need to talk to the big boss," she said, her voice small but firm, completely ignoring the surprised looks of the employees. The secretary stood up quickly. "Honey, you can't be here." "Where are your parents?" But the little girl had already passed her, walking straight to the main office. She pushed the heavy door with all her strength, revealing an office that looked more like a modern palace. Mahogany bookshelves rose to the ceiling, expensive paintings decorated the walls, and behind a huge glass desk, a 30-year-old man watched the scene in astonishment. He was impressive, even sitting in his wheelchair. Perfectly coiffed black hair, piercing blue eyes, and a posture that radiated power even in his condition. The accident 3 years ago had taken his wife and his ability to walk, but it had not diminished his commanding presence in the slightest. "How did you get in here?" he asked, his deep voice echoing through the room. The girl approached the desk, her eyes filling with tears. "Please, sir, my dad needs a job. He's been out of work for 8 months and we don't have anything to eat anymore." The millionaire frowned. "Sweetheart, this isn't a place for you. Call your mom." "My mom doesn't like me," she replied simply, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "But my dad is really good. He can make people walk again when they can't anymore." An eerie silence filled the room. The businessman felt something stir deep inside, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, his voice softer now. The little girl moved even closer, placing her small hands on the edge of the glass desk. "If you give my dad a job, I'll make you walk again." The laughter that escaped the millionaire's lips echoed through the room, but it wasn't cruel. It was a mixture of disbelief and something akin to tenderness. "You think you can work miracles, little one?" "I don't know what a miracle is," she replied seriously. "But my dad always said that when we love a lot, we can do impossible things." The businessman stopped laughing. There was something in that child's eyes that touched him inexplicably. A purity, a hope that he had lost a long time ago. "Tell me about your dad," he said, leaning forward. The girl's eyes sparkled. "He used to work at a big place where he took care of people who couldn't move their legs. For 15 years he helped everyone get better. But a rich family said he did something bad that he didn't do, and then no one else wanted him to work." The millionaire knew that story. In fact, he knew similar stories, the way the powerful could destroy lives with a simple accusation. His own fortune, accumulated through shrewd investments on Wall Street and holdings in diverse assets, had taught him that money was power, but also responsibility. "Does your father really believe he can help me?" he asked. "He doesn't know I came here," the girl admitted, lowering her head. "But he always says that he never gives up, that everyone can get better if they have the right person to help." The rain beat against the panoramic windows of the office, creating a mesmerizing rhythm. The millionaire looked at the wet and determined child in front of him, feeling something he hadn't felt in 3 years, genuine curiosity about the future. "How did you get here?" he asked. "I walked," she replied simply. "I asked a lot of people where the tallest building in the city was, because Daddy always says that the big bosses stay way up high." "You walked alone through the city?" The girl nodded. "It wasn't very far. And I wasn't scared because it was to help Daddy. The businessman leaned back in his chair, watching that courageous little figure. In all his years in business, he had never met anyone as determined as that 4-year-old. "What's your name?" he asked. "I can't say," she replied, biting her lip. "Daddy said I should never tell my name to strangers." "Then what should I call you?" The girl thought for a moment. "You can call me Birdie. Daddy always says I'm free as a birdie." The millionaire smiled for the first time in months. "Very well, Birdie. I'm going to make a deal with you." The child's eyes widened with hope. "I'm going to give your father a chance. But if he's not as good as you say, you'll leave and never come back here. Deal?" The girl clapped her hands, a radiant smile lighting up her small face. "Deal! You'll see. He's the best in the whole world." But while the child celebrated her small victory, neither of them imagined that that simple conversation had set in motion a series of events that would change their lives forever. Nor that outside the building, a bitter-looking woman watched through the rain, already planning how to destroy that spark of hope before it could turn into a flame. 3 days later, the millionaire watched from his office window as a thin, tired-looking man approached the building. He carried an old leather suitcase and walked with the stooped posture of someone carrying the weight of many disappointments. At 42, the physical therapist seemed to have aged a decade in the last few months. The secretary led him to the main office, where the businessman awaited him with a neutral expression. The man entered hesitantly, clearly embarrassed by the situation. "Sir, I didn't know my daughter had come here," he began, his voice strained. "I apologize for the inconvenience." "She's just a child and doesn't understand—" "Sit down," interrupted the millionaire, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. "Tell me about your experience." The physical therapist took a deep breath before beginning. For 15 years, he had worked at the city's leading neurological rehabilitation clinic, specializing in cases considered impossible. Patients with spinal cord injuries, victims of strokes, people who other doctors had given up on. "I developed some unconventional techniques," he explained, his hands trembling slightly. "I combined traditional exercises with specific sensory stimuli, therapeutic music, and even elements of psychology. The results were surprising." "And then?" asked the businessman, genuinely interested. The man's face hardened. "A patient of mine, the son of a very influential family in the city, did not respond to treatment as expected. He had suffered a complex spinal injury, and despite all my efforts, the recovery was partial. The family accused me of medical malpractice, claiming that I had used experimental methods without authorization." The millionaire knew that family, owners of a chain of private hospitals and with powerful political connections, people who did not accept failures even when medicine had its limitations. "Were the accusations false?" he asked directly. "Completely," replied the physical therapist, raising his head with dignity. "All my methods were approved by the clinic's management, but their influence was greater than my word. I was fired, sued, and my reputation was destroyed. No clinic in the area wanted to hire me after that." The businessman was silent for a moment, processing the information. His fortune had been built precisely by observing people, identifying wasted talents, underestimated investments, opportunities that others did not see. "Your daughter said you can make me walk again," he said finally. The physical therapist lowered his eyes. "Sir, I don't want to create false expectations. Each case is unique, and without examining your specific condition—" "Then examine me," interrupted the millionaire. For the next hour, the physical therapist conducted a detailed assessment. He tested reflexes, sensitivity, range of motion. His hands were firm and precise, demonstrating years of experience. The businessman realized that there was something special about the way the man worked, an almost intuitive connection with the human body. "There are possibilities," said the physical therapist finally, his voice cautious but hopeful. Your injury was traumatic, but I can perceive some residual neurological responses. With the right treatment, applied consistently, I accept, said the millionaire immediately. But, sir, I haven't even explained the methods, the time required. Your daughter convinced me. Now you convinced me. We start tomorrow. That same afternoon, as father and daughter walked back home, a woman watched them from the window of a small, poorly lit apartment. The girl's stepmother was 45 years old and a heart hardened by years of frustrations. She had married the child's father when she was only 2 years old, always seeing the little one as a burden she had inherited, along with the relationship. "So now you think you're important," she muttered, watching as the girl skipped happily beside her father. "You think you're going to move up in life and leave me behind?" The bitterness she carried had turned into something more dangerous in recent months. Seeing the family begin to rebuild, especially through the efforts of that child she so despised, was unbearable for her. The next day, the treatment began. The millionaire had transformed a room attached to his office into a makeshift clinic, equipped with state-of-the-art equipment. The physical therapist arrived promptly at 7 in the morning, carrying not only his equipment, but also a notebook full of notes, years of research and development of his revolutionary techniques. "We're going to start slowly," he explained, positioning the businessman on the exercise table. "My method combines low-intensity electrical stimulation with specific exercises and a particular form of breathing that I developed." The first sessions were challenging. The millionaire, used to controlling everything around him, had to accept the vulnerability of depending completely on another person. But there was something in the physical therapist's firm and confident touch that gave him hope. During the breaks, the little girl appeared in the room, bringing colorful drawings that she had made. Birds flying freely through the sky, flowers dancing in the wind, radiant suns shining over imaginary landscapes. Her simple drawings had a strange power to illuminate the clinical and cold environment. "Why do you always draw birds?" the millionaire asked one day, watching her carefully color the wings of a bird. "Because they can go anywhere they want," she replied, without looking up from the paper. "When I grow up, I want to fly too." "And where would you fly to?" The girl stopped drawing and looked at him seriously. "To a place where everyone is happy, where no one is sad or in pain." It was in those moments that the businessman realized how empty his life had become before the arrival of those two people. His routine of meetings, investments, and market analysis seemed meaningless compared to the pure simplicity of that child. But not everything was smooth. The millionaire's partners began to express concern about his growing absence from important meetings. Calculating men who controlled a significant portion of the company's assets began to question his decisions. "You're spending too much time with this physical therapy story," said the senior partner during a video conference. "Investors are noticing your lack of focus on business." "My health is fundamental to business," replied the businessman, but he could feel the tension growing. "And if this treatment doesn't work, you'll be wasting valuable resources on a fantasy." What the millionaire did not know was that his partners had already begun to articulate plans to take control of the company if his physical condition did not improve. They saw his renewed hope as a threat to their own financial interests. Meanwhile, the girl's stepmother had also begun to act. She spread rumors in the neighborhood about the physical therapist's incompetence, reminded people of the old accusations, planted doubts about his professional ability. "Do you really think he can cure anyone?" she told the neighbors. "If he was so good, why was he fired from the clinic?" 2 weeks after the start of treatment, something extraordinary happened. During a particularly intense session, the millionaire felt a sensation he hadn't experienced in 3 years. A tingling in his legs. Soft, almost imperceptible, but undeniably real. "Did you feel that?" asked the physical therapist, noticing the change in the businessman's expression. "I felt it," whispered the millionaire, his eyes filling with tears. I really felt it. At that moment, on the other side of the door, little Birdie pressed her ear to the wood, a radiant smile lighting up her face. Her promise was becoming a reality, but she had no idea of the obstacles that were being erected to prevent that miracle from being completed. A month after the first tingling, the millionaire's life had completely transformed. Physical therapy sessions became the highlight of his days, and the progress, although gradual, was undeniable. He could slightly move his toes, felt pressure when the physical therapist touched his legs, and most importantly, hope had returned to his eyes. Little Birdie had become a constant presence in the office. She arrived every morning with her father, carrying a small, colorful backpack full of new drawings and invented stories. The longest-serving employees of the company, the simple folks who worked in cleaning and maintenance, had fallen in love with the child. "She brightens this place up," commented the cleaning lady, a 60-year-old woman who had worked there for decades. "Before, everything was so serious and cold. Now there's life in these walls." But not everyone viewed the girl's presence favorably. During a tense meeting of the board of directors, the senior partner expressed his growing irritation. "This is an office, not a playground," he said, slamming his hand on the table. "We can't have a child running through the hallways while we're trying to close million-dollar deals." "She's not bothering anyone," defended the millionaire, his voice firm despite still being in his wheelchair. "Not bothering anyone? Clients are starting to comment. They say your company has lost its professional edge." What the businessman didn't know was that his partners had begun to document every instance of inappropriate behavior, building a dossier to question his leadership capabilities. They viewed his physical progress not as a victory, but as a threat to their plans to seize control of the company. Meanwhile, at home, the girl's situation had become untenable. The stepmother, consumed by envy, had intensified her campaign of psychological cruelty. Every night became an interrogation about what happened at the office. "What have you been doing there?" she asked in a harsh voice. "What kind of conversations are you having with that rich man?" "I just draw and play," the girl replied, trying to hide behind her father. "Liar! You're poisoning his mind against us. You want him to send us away after he gets tired of you." The father tried to protect his daughter, but the exhaustion of the long hours at work and the constant pressure at home were taking their toll. He had begun to realize that his wife was not the gentle woman he had married years ago. The stepmother didn't just stop at psychological torture. She began to spread more elaborate lies about the physical therapist in the neighborhood, visiting former colleagues and planting doubts about his competence. "Did you know he's treating a millionaire with unproven methods?" she whispered, in the pharmacies and clinics of the area. "If something goes wrong, do you think the blame won't fall on all of us, on the entire profession?" The seeds of doubt she planted began to germinate. Some professionals in the field began to question whether they should report the case to the State Board of Physical Therapy. In the office, little Birdie had developed her own rituals. Every morning she organized the papers she found scattered around, cleaned small corners that no one noticed, and distributed her drawings throughout the hallways. The humble employees adored her, but the executives began to see her as a symbol of the boss's loss of focus. "Sir," said the secretary one day, hesitantly, "some of the directors are complaining that the girl is messing with important documents." "She's never messed with anything important," replied the millionaire, but he could feel the pressure growing around him. It was during a particularly violent storm that haunted the city for an entire week that everything changed. The torrential rain caused power outages in several neighborhoods, including the commercial building. The emergency generator kept only the basic lights working, but not the medical equipment needed for physical therapy. "We're going to have to suspend treatment until the power comes back on," said the physical therapist, clearly frustrated. "We can't stop now," protested the millionaire. "I'm feeling more progress every day." It was then that little Birdie had one of her simple but brilliant ideas. "Why don't we use candles?" she asked. her eyes shining in the dim light. "And I can sing those songs that my dad likes." The physical therapist hesitated, but something about the child's suggestion intrigued him. He had read about alternative therapies that used a controlled environment of lights and sounds to enhance neurological recovery. "Maybe we can try something different," he muttered thoughtfully. That night, the office turned into something magical. Dozens of candles illuminated the exercise room, creating dancing shadows on the walls. The rain beating on the windows provided a natural rhythm, and the girl's sweet voice, humming simple melodies, created a unique atmosphere. "Take a deep breath," instructed the physical therapist, his voice softer in the golden light of the candles. "Let the music guide your movements." What happened in that session surprised everyone. The relaxing and almost spiritual environment seemed to enhance the exercises in an extraordinary way. The millionaire was able to move his legs with more range of motion than ever before, and for the first time in 3 years, he felt something akin to strength returning to his muscles. "It's incredible," he whispered, tears rolling down his face. I can really feel my legs." Little Birdie clapped her hands with joy, her laughter echoing through the candle-lit room. "I knew it! I knew it was going to work!" But from the dark hallway, a figure watched the scene through the ajar door. One of the partners had decided to check what was happening in the office during the storm, and what he saw infuriated him. In his calculating mind, that mystical session with candles and songs was the final proof that the boss had completely lost his mind. The next day, when the power was restored, the physical therapist made a discovery that would change everything. While organizing his papers, he found in the trash a crumpled envelope that Little Birdie had found and given to him, thinking it was important. Inside the envelope was an old letter, dated 5 years ago. It was a correspondence between the former partner of his old clinic and the influential family that had accused him. The letter revealed a detailed plan to destroy his reputation and eliminate competition in the area of neurological rehabilitation. "My God," he murmured, reading and rereading the words that proved his innocence. They planned everything from the beginning. With trembling hands, he showed the letter to the millionaire. "This is proof that I was the victim of a conspiracy. They wanted to monopolize neurological treatments in the area." The businessman examined the document carefully. His experience in business allowed him to recognize the authenticity of the correspondence. "This changes everything," he said. "With this evidence, we can clear your name." But while they celebrated the discovery, neither of them realized that the girl's stepmother had intensified her malicious efforts. Desperate to separate the family she saw thriving, she had made the cruelest decision of all, lying to social services. "That man is neglecting the child," she said on the phone, her voice filled with false concern. "He takes her to an inappropriate work environment every day. The girl is exposed to situations unsuitable for a child." The call activated an investigation protocol that would change everything. In 48 hours, social workers would be knocking on the door, ready to assess whether Little Birdie should be removed from her father's custody. Meanwhile, in the office, the girl continued drawing her colorful birds, not imagining that a storm much bigger than the rain was approaching, threatening to destroy the family she had fought so hard to rebuild. The social services investigation arrived like a silent hurricane. On the morning of a seemingly normal Monday, 2 social workers appeared at the office, armed with a court order and a report based on the stepmother's accusations. "We need to speak with the minor," said the social worker, a stern middle-aged woman. "We have received reports of possible neglect and inappropriate exposure." The millionaire watched, perplexed, as they questioned Little Birdie. The girl, frightened by the formal situation, responded with monosyllables, her big eyes desperately seeking her father. "Does she come here every day?" asked the social worker. "Yes," replied the girl softly. "And what does she do here?" "I draw, I play, I help Daddy." The physical therapist tried to explain the situation, but the words came out rushed, his anxiety evident. She is safe. I never leave her alone. The employees take care of her when I'm busy, but the investigators had already formed an opinion based on the biased report. They only saw a child being exposed to a corporate environment, far from activities appropriate for her age. "We're going to need to do a more detailed assessment," said the social worker. "The minor will be temporarily in state custody until we resolve this situation." "No!" cried little Birdie, running into her father's arms. "I don't want to leave. I promised I was going to help him walk." The millionaire's heart broke at the desperation in the child's voice. For the first time in years, he felt genuine fury burning in his chest. "Wait," he said, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You can't do this based solely on unfounded accusations." "Sir, this is a legal matter," replied the social worker. "We have a protocol to follow." "Then follow the protocol correctly," retorted the businessman, picking up the phone. "Robert, I need you here, now." While they waited for the lawyer, something devastating happened. Little Birdie, traumatized by the stress of the situation, began to feel ill. Her breathing became irregular, she turned pale, and fainted in her father's arms. "She needs a doctor," cried the physical therapist, carrying his daughter. At the nearest private hospital, doctors discovered something shocking. The girl was severely malnourished and dehydrated. Tests revealed that she had been dividing her small portion of food with other children on the street for months, a silent sacrifice that no one knew about. "How didn't you notice?" asked the doctor, his voice filled with accusation. The father broke down. "She always said she wasn't hungry. She always said she had already eaten." While the girl was hospitalized for stabilization, a nurse noticed something disturbing. During the delirium of the fever, the child mumbled fragmented words about not being a real daughter and Daddy not knowing the truth. "What does she mean by that?" asked the nurse to the physical therapist. The man was silent for a moment, then whispered a truth he had kept for 4 years. "I found her when she was just a baby, abandoned on the doorstep of a church. I never managed to find out who her biological parents were, but it didn't matter. She became my daughter in every sense." The millionaire, who had insisted on staying at the hospital, felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. The purity of that unconditional love touched him deeply. While the girl fought the fever in the hospital, the stepmother saw her opportunity. She visited social services personally, armed with more elaborate lies. "Did you see? He can't even take care of his own daughter properly," she said, feigning concern. "The child was starving right under his nose." "Is there anything else we should know?" asked the social worker. The stepmother hesitated for a moment, then dealt the cruelest blow. "She's not even his biological daughter. He never had proper legal guardianship. It's basically a kidnapping that lasted years." It was then that the millionaire's lawyer arrived with news that would change everything. "I got a restraining order," announced Robert. "The child can remain with her father during the investigation, but there are strict conditions." "What kind of conditions?" asked the physical therapist. "Constant social supervision, weekly reports, and—" Robert hesitated. "The issue of legal guardianship needs to be resolved immediately." The millionaire made a decision that surprised everyone. "I want to adopt the child," he said, his voice firm and determined. "What do you mean?" asked Robert, confused. "If the issue is legal guardianship, then I'll arrange for one. I want to be her legal guardian. I have resources, financial stability, and I can guarantee she has everything she needs." The physical therapist looked at the businessman with tears in his eyes. "Why would you do that for us?" "Because you gave me back something I thought I had lost forever," replied the millionaire. "Hope, purpose, the ability to love again." But the biggest revelation was yet to come. While Robert investigated the adoption procedures, he discovered something in the legal connections of the millionaire's company. The construction company that had falsely accused the physical therapist was a subsidiary of a conglomerate that competed directly with the businessman's businesses. They didn't just attack you, Robert explained to the physical therapist. They were indirectly targeting your boss. Corporate sabotage disguised as a medical dispute. The millionaire felt the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. His company owned significant investments in medical technology and rehabilitation. Destroying the reputation of the best physical therapist in the region was a way to weaken his future projects in the area of healthcare. "We're going to counterattack," he said, his voice filled with determination. "We're going to clear his name and expose this whole conspiracy." Meanwhile, in the hospital, little Birdie finally woke up from her fever. Her first gaze was for her father, who was holding her little hand. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice weak but clear. "I dreamed that you told me that you found me when I was very little." The physical therapist swallowed hard. "It was just a dream, my daughter." "It wasn't," she said, smiling faintly. "I always knew, but it doesn't matter. You are my real daddy, from the heart." At that moment, the millionaire entered the room, walking slowly with the help of crutches. It was the first time he had stood on his feet in 3 years. "You're walking!" exclaimed the girl, her eyes shining with joy. "I am," he replied, tears rolling down his face. "Because a little birdie taught me that miracles happen when we believe in love." The stepmother, upon learning that her plans had failed and that the millionaire was arranging for the legal adoption of the girl, made one last desperate attempt at cruelty. She visited the child in the hospital when she was alone and whispered poison in her ears. "Do you think they're going to want you forever?" she said maliciously. "When they find out that you're nothing special, they're going to abandon you like your real parents did." But little Birdie, strengthened by the unconditional love she had received, looked at the stepmother with a wisdom beyond her years. "You're wrong," she said calmly. "My daddy has chosen me every day for 4 years, and now the big boss has chosen me too. That's more love than many people have in their whole lives." 6 months later, the court finalized the procedures. The physical therapist had his name completely cleared, with the right to compensation for the moral damages suffered. The millionaire not only officially adopted the girl, but also offered a partnership to the father in the new rehabilitation clinic he planned to open. "We're going to revolutionize physical therapy," he said, now walking without help, but still using a stylish cane. "Your methods combined with cutting-edge technology and the humanized environment that your daughter taught us." Little Birdie, now 5 years old, continued drawing her birds. But now they didn't fly alone. They flew in flocks, in families, protecting each other from the storms. "You know what I learned?" she said one day, showing her latest drawing to her father and the millionaire she now considered her second dad. "The strongest birds aren't the ones that fly the highest. They're the ones that teach others to fly too." And so, an impossible promise made by a 4-year-old child became a reality not only physically, but in a much deeper way. She had taught 2 men wounded by life that the real miracle was not in walking again, but in choosing to love despite the pain, in believing in goodness despite the cruelty, and in building a family not by blood ties, but by the ties of the heart. The cruel stepmother, isolated by her own bitter choices, watched from afar as the family she had tried to destroy flourished in love and prosperity, learning too late that the happiness of others only hurts when we choose bitterness as company. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. I promise to bring you videos every day that will make your life happier. Comment what you thought of my story, giving a score from 0 to 10. And thank you very much.